So let's just talk about what we'll need to be able to do these stamped ephemera using our pieces of fabric. You're going to need some permanent inks. So I've got archival waterproof ink in a black, and then I've got two little distress ink pads, one walnut stone and one vintage photo, just simply because I think the colors will go nicely with the fabrics that I've got. And then I have a selection of different fabrics. You can use pretty much what you've got. This is an old embroidered pillowcase. It's quite a nice fine cotton, which feels like a lawn, so I might use some of that. This just is an old cheap cotton pillowcase. I could tear up some of that. Here's another piece of glazed cotton that's got a slightly shiny surface on one side, so I'd want to use the matte surface on that. And then I have here some fabric that has been tea dyed. This was some lining material, so this is got quite a lot of polyester in it, and I'm not sure how the ink will take. I think it will be okay because it has been washed and there won't be any size in it, but it will react differently to the cottons. Here's another bit of tea dyed lining material, which you can see is just a slightly different color, and I do love the variations of color that you get with tea dyed fabrics. This is an old handkerchief with a bit of embroidery, and it was also tea dyed. You can still see some of the little bits of tea on here, but that's an option. And here's just a piece of plain cotton, which also gives you quite a nice soft color to it. The tea dyed ones are generally much softer. I do have here also a lovely piece of very, very fine tulle, and it just fell out of my stash, and I thought, I wonder what that would do if I stamped on it. So that's going to be an experiment. I have no answers as to what that's going to come out like. And then here are more tea dyed fabrics, again old bits of linen where you can see that this beautiful hand embroidered stuff is just falling apart. It's been patched in several places, but I can certainly use pieces of it in my journals to good use. Here's a little hanky that was tea dyed, a bit of muslin and some cottons. These fabrics with this lovely sort of purpley color are muslin, and this is an old sort of silk scarf. These are dyed using black turtle beads, and I'll put the video on how to do solar dyeing with turtle beads in the description for you to have a look at. And then here I've got just a piece of lining fabric, some cotton, some muslin, and some more cotton, and these were dyed with coffee. So you'll see that these have quite nice sort of brown hues, although each type of fabric responds differently to the dyes depending on how porous they are, and so you've got a variety of colors there. So I've got a nice selection of colors, and I'm now going to need to prepare some cardboard to cover with these pieces of fabric before we get started. So I'm going to be using two different kinds of cardboard. This is a recycled card, and it's 150 GMS. And this is multimedia paper, and it's white, and this is 160 GMS. And so with both of these, which are A4 pieces of paper or card, I've cut them into random sizes. I just took my guillotine, cut the paper in half across the width, and then just cut a whole different selection of sizes. No particular measurements, although if you were doing a specific project, you would be able to measure out to fit your cover of a journal or a tag, whatever it may be. But for today, just random sizes. So I'm now going to need a glue stick and a pair of nice sharp fabric scissors and a piece of fabric. And I'm going to show you just with one of these cards how I'm going to glue them down, because the process will be the same for each of them. I'm going to use one of these recycled pieces of card simply because it shows up quite nicely on the white fabric, as opposed to white card and white fabric, which you might not be able to see on camera as easily. And the process is actually quite simple. It's a bit like covering a book, if you ever had to do those when you were at school. So you want to, oh sorry, I've got a bit of glue stuck on from earlier. You want to be able to cover the back of your piece of card quite generously with the glue, and the reason why I'm using the glue stick is because it won't seep through the fabric to the front. Sometimes if you use a liquid glue like a Elmer's glue or one of those craft glues, there might be some seepage through to the front, and that will create a mark which you won't necessarily want as part of your design. Just make sure that you get right to the edges. So by picking up the piece of card like this and running the glue stick down towards the edge, I can make sure that I've got glue right up to the corners. Here we go. And if you tilt this to the light, you should be able to see any spots that look a bit matte, which won't have glue on. The next thing I'm going to do is to simply just place this down on my fabric, leaving about maybe 1/2 centimeter to 1 centimeter border, because I want to turn this over. And then I'm going to use my nice sharp scissors just to trim this off. It is actually far easier to try and stick your fabric down first and then trim it rather than cut to size, but it won't suit everybody's purposes, and some people like to work differently, and that's absolutely fine, but for me this works. And if you have a fabric that's got quite a coarse grain to it, in other words a coarse texture, try and get the lines of the fabric to line up nicely with the orientation of your card. Now, one thing you will notice with this grey card is that you do see the colour showing through it, as opposed to when I've covered with a white card where you don't see the colours showing through. And now I'm going to take my scissors and I'm just going to cut off a corner, but I'm going to leave a little gap on the edge here so that the corner doesn't pop through. So just trimming this slightly. Those of you that do any sewing will understand what I'm doing and why. This just makes it less bulky when I turn the corners over. That's perfect. And now I'm going to just start along one of these short edges first. Just going to put some glue onto my card here. And I'm going to fold it up using my fingers to press against the edge of the card, making sure that I'm getting a nice tight edge over here. I don't want anything bulging. I'm going to do the opposite side next. And once you've cut your card, it's quite a nice thing to do if you're sitting doing a whole lot of these, preparing the card, should I say, rather than just stamping them. Get them ready so that when you've got a project you can actually just do the stamping part, which is quite fun. I'm now going to run some glue down the length of each side, but I'm going to go over the fabric that's the end here. I'm going to put a little bit onto this corner section, and I'm just going to try and tuck it in ever so slightly so that I don't get a funny shaped point at the edge. I'd like a nice clean edge, and I'm going to fold this over. Use your fingers to really pull the fabric across, a bit like stretching a canvas. And then again, I'm just going to go right to the edge of the fabric, onto the fabric itself, so it'll glue on itself, and then tuck these little corners in ever so slightly, and then fold this over. Right, so that's not a long process at all. Leave the back to dry off before you start, and you'll see now that you'll have a whole lot of these that are really nice that you can work on. So I'm going to just let this dry off slightly, and then I'll come back and we'll start stamping, which is the fun part. Well, we're here at the fun part. I've glued quite a lot of fabric onto card. This was some of the muslin that's on the white, and this is on that recycled card. And then here I also have a selection of different fabrics on different cards. So that's on white, the next one's on white, that's on white, that was part of that hanky, that's on the recycled one. It gives it quite a nice tone. There's a bit of tea dyed on tone. This was a bit of that silk dyed with the black turtle beads. That's on white. And some of the darker colors I've put onto the recycled. This was the tulle, that very fine netting, and I'm sure you'll agree that that's actually come out quite nicely. And then I just have a few other smaller pieces here that have been dyed as well. So now that I've got that out the way, I need to select some images that I'm going to stamp on here. I'm going to do the stamping, I think, in black for most of them. And I think the first one that I want to do is to do this lovely stamp of the bird. so almost to create a focal point with the stamp. Just make sure that that's going to fit onto the size of the card and the fabric that I have. And you do need to make sure when you're doing this now, because you only get one hit at being able to stamp this on your fabric accurately. It is going to be different to stamping on card and paper, because it's going to have a little bit of texture in it as well. So you probably would be wise to make sure that you just test your stamp on a piece of paper first, making sure that you know where all the sort of spots are that you maybe need to press a little bit harder, and just keep going on the paper until you actually find that you're getting a really good impression. So with that first impression here, I can see, let me just move it across, I can see I missed out a section there. You're wanting to be able to press down really nicely all over. Perhaps even just keep it on your fabric slightly longer than you would. Now that's come out nicely. Now I'm happy that I've actually worked out where I need to press. I'm going to ink this up. Turn it over just to make sure that you have got ink all over the place. I'm not too sure that I've got enough in this little center bit here, so I'm going to come back and apply some more. Yep, there I can see that's really nice and saturated. And then use your acrylic block or your stamping platform just to position it. Remember, your fabric is going to be a lot more absorbent than paper, and some of it will have texture. So I'm going to press down really well all over, making sure that it's got a good time just to grip onto the fabric. I'm going to lift the two up, and I've got a dull spot there. Okay, so that's something to just be aware of. It's not that I won't use this, I just perhaps would have liked a crisper image on that. So, mistake, but it doesn't matter, it's not the end of the world. I'm going to stamp off the remaining ink that I have on the stamp here. And then we're going to work on a different color, so I'm going to change the stamp that I'm using. Let's put that over here. Let's try this little one here. And I think I might, for that one, like to do, oh, what about a little crab? What did my text say? Because the text isn't really appropriate, but I've got a little crab that I could do. That's too short. Let's try the little crab on there. So again, inking up really well, making sure that your whole image has got sufficient ink on it, because it's very, very absorbent. Then pressing down, making sure that I'm really pressing hard all over. Don't want the same thing to happen as the last one. Ah, look at that. That's a lovely little image of my crab. I'm very happy with that one. Right, so I'm going to stop talking. I'm going to just carry on doing a bit of stamping, and I will speed the video up so that you don't get too bored. Well, if we have a look at what we have done here, I think I'm very pleased with our results and how things have stamped out. Apart from the first image, we've actually done pretty well together. This one, I must say, I was really nervous about doing this one because it was such a big thing, but just taking your time and just leaving the stamps on the original sheet made a difference. Here was another little one I did earlier, just using my stitching stamp so that you could actually create a border for something. And here's a smaller feather, and this little one I did slightly differently. Instead of gluing the fabric over the back, I just frayed it, which gives quite a nice soft edge, and this could be mounted on something. So these little vignettes of fabric and stamps could make a lovely, lovely border for something. You can go ahead now and do all kinds of things. You can ink the edges, you can splash colors on, whatever you want, but this is just the beginning of a lovely, lovely project, and I'm pleased with how it's turned out. Thank you so much for joining me. Please consider subscribing to my channel. Give me a thumbs up if you've liked this video, and don't forget to put the notification bell on so you know when the next video is out. Bye for now.